There is no good reason the defendant is spending Valentine's Day with her paramour and texting her drug dealer 30 times.
It's pretty terrifying to think that someone's going to go back and look at text that you wrote about your spouse, years later, and put it all into a cone of literal death threats.
The Utah mom who allegedly doused her husband with fentanyl, then wrote a children's book about dealing with grief, will have to stand trial on murder charges. We're diving into the biggest moments of day 2 of Kouri Richins' preliminary hearing, what both sides argued, and why the judge ultimately decided there was enough evidence to take this case to trial. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. It's been more than 2 years since Eric Richins was found dead in his bedroom by his wife, Kouri, and more than a year since Kouri was arrested for his murder. Now we know she's officially headed to trial in Utah. On Monday and Tuesday of this week, Richins appeared in court with her new defense team to argue the evidence gathered so far. The 2-day preliminary hearing had been delayed back in May after Richins' original defense attorneys asked to withdraw due to some sort of conflict, and the exact details were never disclosed. Now that Richins' new lawyers are up to speed, Summit County prosecutors presented the mountains of evidence they say proves Richins' guilt at her preliminary hearing.
Which brings us to a discussion of what we are and are not doing today. First, what we're not doing. We are not determining in any degree guilt at all. Ms. Richins was presumed innocent of all charges yesterday. She is presumed innocent of all charges today, and she will remain presumed innocent of all charges through trial. Nothing the court says today affects her presumption of innocence in any way.
We cover a lot of disturbing and troubling cases here at Law&Crime. But what keeps us bringing you these stories is our wonderful sponsors. And I want to highlight a super cool one right now, and that's Odoo. For people like myself who aspire to have a side hustle and maybe you want to start your own podcast, Odoo can help with that. They're a free all-in-one business management software that provides a range of applications that can help with the day-to-day of owning a business. Here at the Law&Crime office, we can also utilize the platform in so many different ways. Our HR manager can use it for payroll and time off. Our sales team can use it for customer relations. I can even use it to manage all of my subscriptions. And guess what? You can try Odoo now for free right now without entering your credit card. You can even get lifetime access to one of the apps in Odoo suites if you don't need the rest. So click our link odoo.com/LC Sidebar in the description and pinned comments and try Odoo now for free. Here's what we know so far. A now 34-year-old Kouri Richins told police that in March of 2022, she made her husband, 39-year-old Eric Richins, a Moscow mule and gave him a marijuana gummy. She says she fell asleep in the room of one of her 3 sons, and when she awoke in the middle of the night to go back to their primary bedroom, she found Eric dead. An autopsy found 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in Eric's system. Prosecutors say Richins bought the deadly drug at least 3 times from her housekeeper, who is also a convicted drug dealer. During day 1 of the preliminary hearing, the defense maintained that there's no evidence that Richins actually put anything in Eric's drink, and no fentanyl was ever found in the home. But the state alleges Richins, who had a real estate business flipping homes, was in dire financial strains and needed the money from Eric's life insurance policies as well as his masonry business to keep afloat. She reportedly wanted to purchase a huge Utah mansion and flip it, but Eric's family says he wasn't on board with that idea. And just 1 day after his death, Richins allegedly closed on that deal. This case caught the world's attention when Richins was arrested, and it was revealed that following Eric's death, she had written a children's book about grief called Are You With Me? She even went on a local news station to talk about it. Witnesses testified on Monday about some of the evidence in the case, including the lead detective, a cell phone analyst, and a forensic accountant. Richins faces nearly a dozen charges, 11 charges in all, including murder, attempted murder, forgery, and fraud. One of the things argued on Tuesday was whether the attempted murder charge should be dropped from the case. That charge stems from an incident on Valentine's Day in 2022, less than 3 weeks before Eric died. Richins reportedly bought Eric's favorite sandwich from a local diner, but after just 1 bite, he reportedly broke out in hives and blacked out. According to witness statements and deleted text messages, Richins had purchased fentanyl pills from her housekeeper just 2 days before Valentine's Day. While Eric was dealing with what seemed to be like a sudden medical episode, the state says Kouri Richins was out with the man she was having an affair with, a handyman named Robert Grossman. The prosecutor, Brad Bloodworth, said Richins' text showed how calculated and cold Richins was that day.
And then, at that point, the defendant's own words are kind of important here because he texts her, right, of his illness, of considering going to the hospital. And what she says is chilling. She says, take a nap. And then she doesn't check on him for 2 hours. She doesn't come home. She doesn't text. She doesn't call. She doesn't check on him. Their next communication is 2 hours later when Eric Richins checks in with the defendant. Notably, throughout the day, Valentine's Day, and thereafter, the defendant's reaction to Valentine's Day events is consistent with a consciousness of guilt. She had texted on February 11th and 12th significantly with her drug dealer during a time frame that corresponds with the drug dealer's purchase of fentanyl at the Maverick and the Draper.
Right.
Those texts are deleted from her phone. She texted with the drug dealer 30 times, about 30 times with Mr. Kouri testimony. On Valentine's Day, and those texts are deleted.
But defense attorney Catherine Nestor says the state hasn't even come close to proving that Valentine's Day incident was anything more than a fluke.
So we believe very, very, very strongly that the charge of attempted murder has not met the lowest standard even of probable cause. And that as rare as it is for a judge to say there's not even enough to charge here, it is anticipated that that will happen on occasion, which is why you do thousands of these, right? Because every once in a while, they don't get up to that level. So, in order for them to establish an attempted murder,
Right.
they have to show that Ms. Richins took some act that caused someone to be in danger of death, right? She had to have caused something that put them at risk, right? Whether they actually died, obviously it's attempt, right? It's pretty terrifying to think that someone's going to go back and look at text that you wrote about your spouse, years later, and put it all into a cone of literal death threats when you say, I wish he'd leave, he's getting on my nerves, I want him to leave the house, I'm going to leave him, I want to divorce him. They put in Eric's divorce meeting with his divorce lawyer. I mean, this was not a perfect couple. They didn't have a perfect relationship. But to take a context, one single text, and to say that that gives you a reasonable belief that she tried to kill him the day before, I don't see the connection at all.
Okay.
I don't think that is a connection.
So I hear you saying you can consider a judge, but it doesn't have any weight.
I don't think it does.
In his response, the prosecutor talks about the standards for probable cause.
Schmidt, in discussing probable cause, references that probable cause in a preliminary hearing is the same as probable cause for an arrest warrant. And if the state were to set forth all the evidence it has, put referenced in its brief, argued here today, and charge an attempted murder, and ask for an arrest warrant on the information.
Or a search warrant.
Or a search warrant.
Right.
And if the state submitted it to 100 judges in Utah, 100 of them would issue that warrant.
Check to speculation.
It's an argument. Overruled. I understand the state's point.
After a recess, the judge announced his decision and explained his reasoning.
Here, having reviewed the evidence admitted, including the 1102 statements, the documentary exhibits that were pre-admitted, having considered the admissible sworn testimony of witnesses that testified live, the court reaches the following determinations. First, for the reasons described at the detention hearing, which remain valid today, the prosecution has shown probable cause that count 1, aggravated murder, and count 3, distribution of a controlled substance, both of which relate to events that are alleged to have occurred on or about March 3rd and 4th of 2022, are supported by probable cause. Ms. Richins is bound over for trial on counts 1 and 3.
But what about the attempted murder count that the defense was trying to get thrown out?
With respect to count 2, attempted aggravated murder, alleged to have occurred on February 14 of 2022, the prosecution has admitted evidence sufficient to support a reasonable belief of the following facts and events. That in January of 2022, Kouri Richins secured a life insurance policy on her husband's death, or her husband's life, through fraudulent means. That she had a significant financial incentive to secure his death because she would do better under the premarital agreement if he were dead, and her businesses were highly leveraged. Then on February 14, she purchased food for them both, including him. She described it as lunch in her text message to her friend in June. She was not honest about where she was going that day or what she was doing after she left the family home. Eric had a significant reaction to something that day, sufficient to make him consider going to the hospital. The state has admitted evidence that fentanyl can cause a serious reaction. There's significant evidence, at least, to support a probable cause finding that Ms. Richins had secured fentanyl by February 11th, and that on or about February 26th, she contacted her source again and said she needed something stronger. These facts taken together would support issuance of a search warrant to investigate whether Ms. Richins had attempted to cause the death of her husband. They would support issuance of an arrest warrant for her arrest on attempted murder, and they are sufficient to support bind over under the probable cause standard for attempted aggravated murder on February 14, 2022.
The judge said the insurance fraud charges Richins faces would be bound over for trial as well.
I imagine Ms. Richins would like to enter pleas of not guilty to all charges.
Correct, Your Honor.
Does she waive reading of the third amended information?
We waive reading.
All right. The court, Ms. Richins, is entering pleas of not guilty to counts 1 through 11 in the third amended information. Where would you like to go from here?
We'd like to set a trial date, Your Honor.
Have you had a reasonably detailed conversation with the state about numbers of witnesses, length of time? Because I'm going to have some questions.
We have discussed it, and what we have agreed to, I don't know if it works with the court calendar, is we would like to set aside 4 weeks, basically the month of May, to try the case. So we think that would include jury selection. So we figure the jury selection is going to be at least a week and 3 weeks for trial.
Once all the attorneys gave their input about scheduling, the trial was set for May of 2025, with jury selection starting on April 28th. After the hearing was over, Richins' attorney released a statement saying, in part, We are aware that the preliminary hearing stage favors the prosecution to an extraordinary degree and respect the court's decision. We firmly believe the charges against Kouri do not withstand thorough scrutiny and are confident that the jury will find the same. We will, of course, continue to follow this very high-profile trial for you right here on Law and Crime Network and right here on Sidebar. But for now, that does it for this episode of Sidebar. You can check out more episodes and subscribe to us anywhere you listen to your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. I'm Elizabeth Millner, and this has been Sidebar presented by Law and Crime.